What's up everybody, you're watching Model Aviator, I'm Adam. This week we're going to be reviewing the new FMS 80mm F-86 Sabre, and we'll start by showing you how we got it together. The F-86 assembly is relatively simple. The manual is very well written and descriptive and takes you through what are just a few steps very well. Now the first thing you're going to want to do before you actually start the physical build is set your transmitter up and bind your receiver to the airplane. The reason you need to do that is you're going to have to open up those speed brakes for part of the assembly. And a quick tip on the speed brakes. Go into your servo travel on whatever channel you've got those on and turn the travel down to 50% on both ends. That way when you bind the airplane and power up the servos, they're not in a bind and overdriven. That way you can go to both ends, you can dial the travel in to where they're just closed and flushed and just open as far as you'd like to open them without overdriving and burning up those servos. As you can see, the part count is low and they'll start you with the main wing assembly. There's a single wing tube and a single electronic connection that happens automatically. You want to make sure you hold the main gear doors closed so that when you slide the wings on, the wheels go over a tab in the fuse that holds those doors shut. Then you'll use 2 screws per wing to tighten the wings down. Next you'll install the rear part of the fuse. This is going to require fishing some wires from the front part of the fuse through a little slot in the top of the rear fuse just to get those ready. You'll then use 3 screws, 2 inside the air brakes, that's why you need to be able to get those open, and 1 underneath to attach the rear part of the fuse. Next you'll install your horizontal. You'll want to plug in your 2 elevator servos and then use a single screw to tighten down the horizontal stabilizer. You'll want to make sure you stow your wiring in a channel just in front of the horizontal. Then you'll plug in the rudder servo to your vertical stabilizer and install your vertical stabilizer with 3 screws, 2 on the side and 1 up front. Next there's a couple of scale bits. There's a pitot tube that screws in and an antenna underneath that is a tab and slide installation. The last bit of the assembly is to install your push rods. They have a Z-bend on the servo arm end and a ball link on the control horn end. Now some of you that have read the manual will notice that I went out of order. The manual does clearly state, before installing the main wing, horizontal tail, and vertical tail, the linkage rods for ailerons, flaps, elevators, and rudder should be installed in advance. I disagree. If you do that, none of these surfaces are going to be plugged in, which means none of the servos are definitively centered. If you do it last, everything's plugged in, you power up the airplane, the servos center, and now you can install your push rods and adjust them so that all your control surfaces are centered at the same time. That just makes more sense to me. The F-86 has a 48-inch wingspan. It's 46 inches long. Our example weighs 7 pounds 2 ounces, ready to fly with a Spectrum Smart G2 6L 5000 pack. It has a 2000 kV motor, 100 amp ESC, 8 13-gram and 3 9-gram servos, and is recommended to be flown with 6L 4000 to 5500 milliamp batteries. The FMS 80mm F-86 is what I would consider a full house scale jet. That means that it has details and features that used to be reserved for 90mm jets. There's a trend now where we're starting to see 80mm jets that are considered super scale. They have details, they have features that we've never seen at the 80mm size before, and while none of them are perfect, they are head and shoulders above scale 80mm jets from just a couple of years ago, and they're a good starting point for a really discerning modeler willing to make a couple of changes and get it as close to perfect as they can. I think this airplane, with its level of detail and its features, is right at home in that category, and I think that's fair to say. It is a plug and play, which means that you have to choose your protocol. It doesn't matter what protocol you use, so long as your receiver is full range, it's fast, it's a jet, you need to have a full range receiver, and you have enough channels to obviously operate the aircraft. You can do it with 6 channels. That's going to give you your typical 4-channel control: aileron, elevator, rudder, and throttle control. Incorporated into the rudder will be a steerable nose wheel with a separate servo. You'll have flaps and you'll have retracts. Incorporated or wide into the flaps at 6 channels will be your speed brakes. So you put the flaps down, speed brakes come out. You put the flaps up, speed brakes go in. We fly Spectrum, so we chose an AR8360T receiver. That's an 8-channel AS3X receiver. We chose that for a few reasons. Obviously, we'd like to incorporate AS3X, and we want an extra channel to put that on a switch so we can turn it on and off and see how the airplane flies both ways. We also wanted to be able to adjust the AS3X through our transmitter and make that pretty simple. We also wanted to isolate the speed brakes to be able to operate those independently, and that's easy to do. They're simply wired into the flaps. You remove the Y harness, you plug the flaps and the speed brakes into a separate channel, assign it to whatever switch you want, and you're done. It's very simple to do that, and we wanted to, so that's why we went with an 8-channel receiver. The F-86 has some subtle features that are not in plain sight. When it comes to the hinges, the aileron, elevator, and rudder are all pin hinged. That's really nice. The flaps are the only foam hinge on the airplane, and they're very thick, so not too bad. The oleo struts are all suspension struts, which is really cool, and your nose wheel steering is easily adjustable via a quick connect that's pretty easy to get to if you turn the airplane over. This ended up being a little bit of a point of contention, so just something to look for. On my first takeoff, I noticed the airplane was a little bit squirrely with the nose wheel steering. When I turned it over and looked at it, this is what I found. When I would try to move the nose wheel, the entire steering servo mount was moving, and the reason that that was happening is the quick connect was too tight on the servo arm. So a quick connect, as the servo arm moves, it's supposed to be able to spin on that servo arm so that you don't put the push rod in a bind. It couldn't move, and that was causing my steering inconsistencies. I loosened that up just a bit so that it could move free and easy, and the mount stopped moving and the airplane started steering right. So just something to look for. You get 2 drop tanks. They are a tab and slide installation, so you can take them on and off, and of course you can fly with them if you'd like. You get a full set of F-86 nomenclature decals, so if you want to install those all over the airplane to make it look that much more scale, you can certainly do that. Possibly the coolest feature of all is something that FMS is kind of known for, and that's multiple paint scheme choices with an airplane, and you have that with this 80mm F-86. You can get the Huff, which is the one that you see here, or you can get a Sky Blazers version. That's pretty cool. The hatch on the F-86 is pretty nice. You have a convenient flush mount button that you can push. Comes right off. We've got the largest pack we can get on this. It's decent size battery bay, but it isn't huge. There's not really a way, given the scale features that are right there, that you can take much foam off this to fit a larger battery. So you need to get something that's going to fit. This is the largest pack that I own that I could get in here, and this is a Spectrum G2 5000 6-cell pack, and it's shaped rectangular like this, so in this configuration it just does fit and does not in any way impede the hatch. I tried an HRB 5000 and I could force the hatch closed, but I had a little crack there. It did not fit flush for sure. We also flew the airplane on 4000 HRB 6Ls and 4000 Gen 2 Spectrum packs. So just know that whatever pack you use, if you're up around 5,000, certainly the 5500, which is the top of the range that they recommend, you need to be looking at getting as compact a pack as you can to get it to fit. When it comes to setup, the manual has all the pertinent information to get you ready for a successful Maiden, and of course you can adjust from there to your personal taste. You have control throw information, balance range information, and push rod placement information as far as the servo arm and the control horn. You want to make sure that you mechanically adjust these push rods, make sure all the surfaces are perfectly centered, and you want to pay particularly close attention to the dual elevator servos. It's not just getting them even at neutral, but making sure that the elevator comes up and goes down even as well, so you're not causing a turn when you use the elevator. There's no expo information really in the manual, but that's personal preference. You'll have to adjust that based on your flying style and previous setups. We are going to put our setup page next. All the information of our setup is there, so you can check that out. We did make some transmitter electronic changes to the throws to get the airplane dialed the way we want. So you can pause this, check out our setup, and incorporate that on your airplane if you'd like. Okay, we're going to get to the flying. You're going to see a decent little amount of footage here. We've got some Maiden bits, the Maiden takeoff, stall test, and landing, just so you can see how that went. And then there is a little footage. You can't actually see impact, but we had an incident with this thing. We were trying to get a specific shot. I was in the power too much for too long, and on what would have been an extended downwind, I put this thing into low voltage cutoff, had no power to extend my downwind, ended up way lower than I wanted to be, could not make the turn to the runway, and I was so interested in making sure that where I was headed wasn't going to hit anything or anyone that I forgot to raise the gear. So I put this thing in the weeds. It got scratched up big time by some pretty thick wheat knobs that had been cut underneath. Put some indentions on both leading edges, put a few scratches here. You may see those in the footage. I'm not sure if you can tell with this lighting, but other than that, didn't break a thing. Didn't rip any gear out, didn't rip any gear doors off. This is a tough airplane, and we didn't mean to test that, but we did. So we'll show you that, and then we'll show you a flight from the next day where we spliced some footage together. We were having a tough time with the color of the clouds and the color of the airplane, making the autofocus wig out on both ends on the turnarounds, but we put together a pretty decent little scalish air show for you to check out. So check out this flight footage, and we'll see you back here and give you our final thoughts on this beauty. Here's our first stall test. We did one completely dirty, and the result was the same. On this maiden landing, I didn't get it slowed down as well as I could have, and I ate up a bit too much of this shorter runway, so we ran off in the grass rather than trying to turn and scraping a lane. We didn't officially do grass ops, but I can already tell you, as far down as that front nose gear door hangs, it needs to be short. Oh shit. Out of power. Sorry for the language there, but it's been a while since I made a mistake like this. Kind of embarrassing, to be honest. That roll on takeoff was nowhere near as slick as Bob Hoover, but he's who I was thinking of when I did it. This is a super smooth airframe and a really nice, realistic sound. There's plenty of power, speed, and vertical to do an F-86 justice. Landing the airplane with the air brakes engaged doesn't really change the way it handles, but you do have to add some power, although not as much as I thought I would. I really enjoyed flying this airplane, and on a personal note, the F-86 Sabre is my second favorite jet of all time behind the A4 Skyhawk, so I was really pleased that FMS sent us one of these for us to review. It's an honor to have it in the hangar, and it's an honor because it really does that airplane justice. This airplane flies very, very well. It's very stable, very predictable. It's a good, honest airframe. It doesn't need a gyro to fly well. However, having AS3X dialed in and really tuned to this airplane like we like to do it does refine the airplane a bit more, and when the breeze picks up, you notice the difference. It's just a much more stable, predictable airplane in some breeze, and that really helped us out on the second day where we were fighting a bit of a breeze and wanting to land at scale with everything hanging out, and that's tough to do in wind without a little bit of help, so certainly helped there. When it comes to flight time, on the 4000s at 3 minutes, the way we flew it, we needed to be thinking about landing. With the 5000s, we could get 4 minutes with good throttle management. I think I might be able to eke out 4.5, but it's going to take some playing with it to get it there. You really got to be careful with the throttle management with this one because you just can't get a huge pack in here. I'd prefer to be flying on a 6 or 7000, but I can't get it in there. When it comes to balance and the way the airplane feels in the air, it is fine. It's a scale jet. It didn't feel nose heavy at all to me. When you roll it inverted, it requires a normal amount of down pressure, down elevator to hold inverted flight, about what you'd expect and about, frankly, what you'd use if it were a real F-86. That's what you want out of a scale jet, a scale experience, and it is. So, really love the jet. I don't think it would be a good first jet. The setup is a bit complicated, and you need to have some scale airplane setup experience. I think having a first EDF under your belt would be great. I think it'd make a good second EDF and an awesome first really nice scale EDF. It is easier to take off and land than a lot of scale jets, and you can get that nice wheelie down the runway if you want to, so that is pretty cool. Comes to price point, $499.99 is more than fair for the options you get, the features you get, and the flight performance you get. And if you decide that you'd like to take advantage of that price point and get yourself one of these, they should be in stock today, the day that we are releasing this video. They're supposed to be back in stock. So if you want to add one to your hangar, we'll put a link in the description where you can do just that. When you use that link, it doesn't cost you any more, but it helps support our channel. So when you take the time to buy it that way, we appreciate it. Thank you very much. That's it for us. Great airplane, great representation of an F-86. Glad to have it in the hangar. Take care of yourselves. Happy flying. We'll see you next week with something cool with wings.